Yeah, one second. I think so. The recording has to be started. Yeah. Warm good morning to all of you for joining on this workshop. First of all, I would like to tell you about Postgraduate Academic Council. So PGAC of IIT Bombay looks at addressing the issues of postgraduate students in terms of academics, and it also organizes various events and workshops, etc., so that we can transfer the skills among ourselves and also acquire new skills among the PG community. So PGAC round the year has been organizing very good workshops right from the start, even though we had to face this unprecedented challenge of a COVID-19. We organized far more number of events thanks to the online mode, and always the number of participants who joined in our workshop have been motivating us, and we are always benchmarking ourselves to do the best. And today we are here for this workshop on scientific computing, and we are going to teach you some skills related to MATLAB and ParaView. And I would like to thank my team members, all of the team members who have worked day and night to organize this event. And I would like to thank the speakers. But more about that, I would like to introduce to you the IITB Monash Research Academy, who are sponsoring this event, because of which we are able to organize this workshop in a very high-tech setup, which has never been done before. So I would like to introduce to you the IITB Monash Research Academy through a short video. Gopi, if you can play the video.
We can't see the video. They can't see actually.
Oh, there is a small.
But we cannot see the video.
Oh, okay. Thanks for getting that down. Yeah. Can you play it again? Thanks for pointing. So that was a nice introduction video by IITB Monash. I would like to request Gopi to please share the website of IITB Monash Research Academy. So a few words about IITB Monash Research Academy. So this is an academy located inside our IITB campus, where we have been offering joint PhD programs, clubbing the intellectual capital of IIT Bombay as well as Monash University. There's about 150 plus graduates now, and all of them are well placed in various research laboratories, industries. Some of them have even led on to open good startup companies, some in IITB and some even in abroad. So if you are interested to pursue some exciting research involving IIT Bombay as well as Monash, you can always join the academy. The call for admissions for the next cycle, that is supposed to happen in June and July, is going to come soon. You can follow the website of IITB Monash Academy. Some salient features: IITB Monash Academy supports your travel to Monash, where you can get an international exposure to the research area you are working. And it also gives you opportunities on international communication with various stakeholders. This will improve your research capability and also your opportunities to grow yourself by taking the advantage of both. You can apply for the PhD program through this website, and you can also join us for some exciting research that is happening. Gopi, can you just scroll down to the alumni page if it is? Yeah, it's on the top. You see the menu. Information. About us, sorry. About us. Alumni.
Someone is asking that.
Alumni. So we have a very good list of alumni who are placed in top research centers, universities, and some of them have gone on to open startups and have taken up leadership position in various industries. So I would like to thank the Academy for offering us the technical help for organizing this wonderful workshop. And I wish all of you to have a wonderful weekend today by learning a new skill that you can use also. And I would like to inform you that this lecture will be uploaded in the, this workshop will be uploaded in the PGAC YouTube website. So you can share about this to your peers also, who can later on also have a look at this. So have a nice day. I would like to then now transfer to
Radik. One question is asked by Riham.
Yeah.
If a person is already enrolled in a PhD program at IITB, can it get converted?
No, you will have to separately apply to IITB Monash Academy and undergo their admission process, which is a little bit different from a normal IITB procedure. So if you have any queries related to admissions, you can always approach the Academy's contact information. You can contact from the contact information given in the website. So all of you have a nice day. And once again, I would like to thank my team for pulling this off in a very wonderful manner. So on to Sunita now. Sunita, you can please take it forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Radik. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our speakers for the day. So we have on board Ms. Rekha Khoth and Mr. Gopikrishnan Ramesan. Rekha is a PhD research scholar from the Department of Mathematics. She has been a gold medalist during her bachelor's and master's in mathematics. She has multiple scholastic achievements to her credit, including the CSIR NET, the State Eligibility Test, and the DST Inspire, to name a few. Her research interest lies in the application of numerical methods to solve differential equations. She works with finite element method, which is one of the most widely used for problem solving in engineering. She's also working on development of polygonal methods like virtual element method, which is a generalization of FEM, and it allows to deal with complex geometries more efficiently. Our second speaker for the day, Mr. Gopikrishnan, is a fourth-year PhD research scholar from IITB Monash Academy. He works on mathematical modeling of different physical problems and has a keen interest in life sciences. He holds a master's degree in mathematics from IISER Thiruvananthapuram, and he has multiple research publications to his credit, along with some scholastic achievements like the DST Inspire and CSIR Net Fellowship. We are very pleased to have you all on the board, and I would like to now hand over to our speakers for the day to get started with the workshop. Looking forward for this learning experience, and all the best to all the participants. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sunita, for a nice introduction. And thank you, Radhik, for arranging all the facilities for us. I would also like to thank other PGSC members, Sandeep, Parth, and Pratik, for all their efforts in organizing this workshop and giving us a flat platform to share our knowledge. And now, a very good morning to all the participants. We are delighted to get such an overwhelming response from you all, and I truly appreciate your interest. I'm sure at the end of the day, we all will learn something new. Okay. So before going into the details of mathematical techniques, let me briefly tell you about our plan and why we chose MATLAB. I can share my screen.
Yeah, you can share. You're logging from my account, right?
Yeah.
So you can share the screen. So Sunita, just make my account as co-host. Yeah, she's sharing the screen.
Yeah, I'm using Radhik's account.
Yes.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, good. So let me answer the second question, that why we chose MATLAB. MATLAB is very much user-friendly language. It has inbuilt packages which are fully documented or which have fully documented facilities, and you can have the great or nice visualization in MATLAB. Of course, there are disadvantages of using MATLAB. That's the slowest software because of the nature of using function file as compared to other softwares like C++. I can just tell you what is that. Let me open the new note. So suppose you want to define a function f. You give input and you have some desired output here. Okay. Now this input has different data types. I'm sorry for the bad handwriting. Okay. So different data types. What is data type? Data type is an attribute of data which tells the computer how the user wants to use the data. Okay. So for example, like suppose I want to give the integer values or the floating point option, so which allows to give the fractional values. Double means you can use more bytes, or the string option, so it allows to store the sequence of characters like A, B, C. Okay. So in MATLAB, we do not have a choice to give this data type to the input, but as in the other languages, C++. So in C++, every time you have to specify the data. Okay. So that's why C++ is faster than MATLAB. So it is used mainly for, it can be used mainly for the large systems or developing the games. Okay. So if this is our input and output, and user is interested only in the input and output, he or she doesn't care about the inbuilt programming, which is C++, MATLAB or Python. So in that case, it is left to the developer. Okay. And user is only interested in the input and output. But C++ uses, it has many syntax rules and different programming conventions which makes it little bit hard. Okay. So that's why I feel MATLAB is very intuitive and concise. So it is more beneficial for the scientific community. Yeah. That's why we wanted to that's why we preferred MATLAB today. And frankly, one day workshop is enough to learn MATLAB. Okay, so this was all about the software. I'll tell you about our plan. Okay, so how do we want to teach MATLAB? There are two ways. Okay, so one, we can choose down to top. What does that mean? So first we will tell you all the commands. Okay, so what is a for loop, what is while loop, what is switch, and so on. Then we will give you a problem and ask you to solve. Other option is top to down. It's exactly opposite. We will introduce a problem. We'll tell you what are the schemes to solve that problem, and we'll solve it. Okay. And we feel that this second approach is better to understand the MATLAB efficiently. Why? I'll just give you one analogy. Okay. So it's like learning how to drive. Okay. Suppose you want to learn how to drive. First, in this approach, we'll tell you what is the job of brake. Okay, you can use it, stops the car. Or what is the job of accelerator? You can decrease or increase the speed. Okay, steering is used to steer. Clutch, it disconnects the engine and your shaft, and then we will ask you to go and drive. Okay, or in the other approach, okay, we'll make you sit in the car. Okay, I'll sit with you on co-driver seat. Okay, right now Gopi is in back seat. Okay, and then I'll tell you, okay, slowly increase the speed. I'll give you the instructions, and then you can experience everything along with it. Okay, it has a name. It's called hands-on experience. So that's why we want to follow. I think this is better, hands-on experience. Okay. Oh, nice. So let me start the real business now. Okay. So these are the notes which I have prepared for this workshop. Scientific computing and visualization with MATLAB and ParaView. Now, most of the mathematical models are governed by the differential equations. Okay? So that's why we decided to consider different physical situations and then to solve the different differential equations associated with that situation. So first we will consider transport equation. Okay. And the second will discuss Poisson equation. Transport is 1D model. We will discuss 1D model. Okay, and the Poisson 2D model. And we will apply finite difference method to solve this equation. Okay, we'll only use there is literally zoo of methods to solve the differential equations, but we will discuss only finite difference method. I'll tell you about the finite difference in a moment. Let's just start with the transport equation first. Okay. So what is the transport equation? Consider let me choose color. Yeah. So consider a thin tube. Okay. Suppose this is your tube. Between the points, placed between the points x equal to alpha and x equal to beta. A fluid, let's say water, is flowing through the tube. So there is a water which is flowing through the tube, and it has velocity A. A is positive. Okay. Now we inject a dye at x equal to alpha from left hand side in the tube. Now this dye is transported across the tube to the point x equal to beta by the flowing fluid. And we are interested in computing the concentration of this dye at any point, okay, at some point, the position at position x and at time t. So this is the model problem. And then what is the corresponding differential equation? I will not tell you the details of how we get this differential equation. I don't want to explain the physics behind it right now. So the function, so what do we have to do? We have to find the function utx. Okay, time varies from 0 to t and x varies from alpha to beta. T is some positive number, okay, capital T, and satisfies the differential equation del tu plus del x a equals to 0. This is partial derivative with respect to time t and partial derivative with respect to spatial variable x. Okay. Now what we did, the initial concentration of the dye in the tube is given by u0x and u0x. What does this mean? The condition at time t equals to 0. So before injecting the dye into the tube, suppose there is already dye in the tube which is given by the function u0 of x. Okay. If u0 of x is 0, that means it's just the water. There is no dye in the tube. And if u0 of x has a value, then that gives the value of dye at each point x before injecting the dye, more dye into the tube. Okay. And now the concentration of the dye at the left hand point, ut alpha is equals to ult. That means this is the ult. So from the left hand side, at x equal to alpha, we are injecting the dye which has concentration ult at time t. Now observe one thing here. The model problem, this seems like 3D model, but we are considering the differential equation is 1D model. It actually doesn't make any sense, right? In one spatial dimension, we are talking about the flow of a fluid, right? It doesn't have any sense. Then how can we imagine this scenario in one dimensional? So for that, you have to imagine very thin tube. For example, just consider blood vessels. Imagine blood vessels. Okay? Blood vessels are part of the circulatory system, right? Through which blood flows. Blood vessels are of different types, but the diameter of all of them are just in few millimeters. Okay, they're very thin, and that we can imagine. And it's like, suppose we are injecting some chemical into the blood vessel, and we want to find the concentration of chemical at particular cell. Okay, and because of the thickness, so diameter is very, very less as compared to the length of the vessel, right? So that model can be approximated by 1D model. That can be viewed as 1D model, and we can find the solution. Okay. So what is next? Now we have model problem. How do we want to solve it? In real life, it's unfeasible to find the exact solution of differential equations. Sometimes I won't mind even saying it's next to impossible to find the exact solution. There are infinite number of points, and even computer cannot find the solution at infinite number of points in finite amount of time. So for that, what we do, we choose finite number of points from the infinite number of points, okay, and we find the solution only at those finite number of points, and then we can interpolate the function and then find the solution at any other point. Okay, so that's what is the basis of finite difference method. Yeah. Now we have to divide this. So we have two variables. One is time variable and one is space variable. We have to divide the time interval. We have to divide the time domain into the intervals of length. Okay. Suppose this is time is t0, t1 to tn, and then length is delta. which is Tn plus 1 minus Tn. The time step is delta. And for space variable from alpha to beta, we divide it as x0, x1 to xi. Okay. And the difference and the mesh size or the discretization factor h is xi plus 1 minus xi. Okay. We can choose different values of delta and h. And the approximate value of concentration at the point. So we want to find now u at Tn xi for all n and for all I. This we can denote by uin. Okay, this is time and this is space. Now what is the data we have? Concentration we have at time equals to 0. So this which gives this one condition. U0 I at is U0 at xi for all I. Now since we are using the discrete values, we cannot approximate the exact partial derivatives using discrete values. So we have to approximate the derivatives as well. So our equation is del tu del x au. A is independent. Remember, A is independent of x. Okay, it's just positive constant here. So for del tu is approximated by this equation. So this is just some simply we can obtain this from Taylor series expansion. Okay, well, how do we find just the derivative? Approximate. This is limit h tending to 0 f of x naught. Suppose we want to find the derivative, first derivative at x naught. Right, this is one formulation. So it's like that. So in the first derivative is in the time variable. So you are taking u of Tn plus 1 minus u of Tn xi by delta. Okay, this is the partial derivative we are taking. I have written it here the ODE, but this is just the partial derivative in one variable. Okay, so think as the derivative in time variable. Okay, so this is like u at Tn plus 1 xi minus u Tn xi, and the time step is delta. So divide by delta plus a into, this is for the space variable. There are now different formulations of writing the derivative. So here I can write this also as, f of x naught minus, f of x naught minus h by h. So here in the time variable, we are using that formulation. U of Tn xi minus u of Tn at xi minus 1 divided by h. I hope you guys know what is the difference between the ordinary differential equation and the partial differential equation. I just use the terminology. So in the partial differential equation, you have more than one independent variables. In ODE, you just have one independent variable. So here we have t and x. That's why we are writing partial derivative. Okay. So this is actually called as, 1-point scheme. So we are just using the values, in the time variable, we are using the value, next value.
Red color if you are using it will be good.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, it's not that clear. No? So, yeah. So, what I was saying, 1-point scheme. So for time variable, we are using only the one-step value, and x variable is also, we are using the one previous value. There are other methods as well. So this is called as, first one is called as forward. This is like backward. There are methods like the central difference and all, which uses, the 2 points. These are called as two-point schemes. There are multiple point schemes, but we are just choosing forward and backward here. It's not that you can choose any method for any problem. Okay, there is reason behind it why we are using forward for the time, why we are using backward for the space variable. I'll tell you that, because see, it's not that we want to, we can apply any scheme and it will converge, or do you mind by converge? So see, we have a model problem. We are using some scheme to approximate it. Since we are approximating it, we are actually committing a crime here, right? And every crime has a price to pay. So there will be an error, which is called as numerical error. So we expect that the error between the exact solution and the approximated solution should go to 0 as your discretization factors go to 0. Okay, that is one point. To take care of that, there is that analysis also involves the stability factor. What is stability? Stability means the solution should be bounded. Okay. So there are many ways of doing stability analysis. One is very famous, which is CFL condition. Okay. This is Courant, Frederick, Louis.
Rekha, there is one question, like shouldn't we keep consistency in using forward, backward, central for a particular equation? Is it
Consistency what? Sorry, I didn't get.
Consistency in using forward / backward / central for a particular equation.
No, that depends.
Okay.
See, for which method we use, forward, backward, that's what I'm saying right now. So we need the convergence. We have to prove the stability of the method. So for that, if the method is stable, then only you can use the forward or backward. So you have to first apply forward, backward, and then check whether the method is stable, whether it is converging. There are other factors like consistency. Then only that method will be successful. Okay.
I can add one more comment to what Rekha said, just to add up, like there are many schemes to differentiate the partial derivatives that seems very promising. For example, there are this something called central differences. So central differences are widely used to approximate partial derivatives when you do optimization. But if you use a central difference scheme, there's a very good chance it will not converge and it will not be even stable. So even though the partial derivatives converge, that is absolutely no assurance that a scheme using that partial derivative, that approximation of partial derivative will converge. For example, you can use a forward difference for the time and central difference for the space, and it will not converge. It will not be even stable. So it's very difficult to make a priori guesses by writing these schemes. Always you have to do a rigorous mathematical analysis when this happened. For example, this happened yesterday. We were doing a code and then we thought, okay, we have some kind of condition in our mind and we were testing this one. But like for half an hour we were running the code again and again, and this is the solution was shooting up. It was going like about 10 power 115 and that kind of range. Then we had to go back again and check what kind of stability condition it has to be satisfied, and implement that stability condition into MATLAB code. Then only you will get solutions that correctly and properly approximate your exact solution or the real solution.
Yes, exactly. So that's what I'm talking about, the CFL condition. So what is the CFL condition? It states that number A delta t by delta x here. So it changes with respect to the problem here. So this should be less than some number, okay? Maximum number. So it's like, this is called as courant number. And courant number measures how much the information is propagating in your computational spatial grid at a given time. That means let's say for this example, explicit example, we need to take this constant to be less equal to 1. Why? What will happen if it is greater than 1? So this means, see, if it is, so we are demanding that A into delta t should be less equal to delta x. This is our numerical displacement. Okay, this is our numerical displacement. So what we are saying is, so this is our grade. Okay, so numerical displacement, this should be less than and this is your delta x. Okay, so this should be less than the delta x. If it is greater than delta x, then this will fall into here, somewhere here, and then we don't know the values here. Yeah? We are using the previous values to find the next value. So if it is greater than 1, we need the values which are which is not just the adjacent one. Okay? That's why we need this condition A delta t less equal to delta x. So we have to choose this number less equal to 1. So again, this changes with the problem. as Gopi was saying, we were stuck at doing the heat equation, and there we needed to use the constant 1/4. Okay. So where were we? Yeah. So this is the approximation for the time forward difference, and this is for the backward. Okay. In the notations we have used capital U. This is just UIN plus 1 minus UIN by delta, and this is UIN minus UI minus 1 by H, and right hand side is 0. Just rearrange the equation, take all the values with respect to n plus 1 time step to the left hand side, and all the remaining terms to the right hand side. Okay. So this is called as explicit scheme, where we write, the n plus u, we find the value at n plus 1th time step using the values at the previous step. Okay. So that's why this is called as explicit scheme. In the implicit scheme, we cannot actually do this stuff. Okay, so we cannot write in terms of recursive relation. So let's look at it for I equal to 1, how this equation looks like. U1 n plus 1, U1 n, and I minus 1 is U naught of n. Okay, and what is U naught of n? Is UL at Tn, right? Which we know. This is given data. So that's why for I equals to 1, we have to write a separate equation, and we have to impose the boundary condition there. That's why we are writing separately for I equal to 1. Yeah. So this is the corresponding, these are the corresponding equations we'll get. UI 0 equal to U naught of x. This you have seen before. No? This is the initial condition. That's the first equation. The second equation comes from the final system we are writing here for all. So this varies for all I between 0 to I. This is for I varies from 2 to I, because we have written separate equation for I equals to 1 here. So this should vary from 2, no, I varies from 2 to I, and n varies from 0 to n minus 1, because here your time step is n plus 1. So n should vary, small n should vary from 0 to n minus 1, so that we can find the values from 1 to n. And the third equation is corresponding to I equal to 1, where we have imposed the given data. Okay. These, and then we have to solve the system. So this we can solve in MATLAB. Bobby will show you how to write the code for this and to find the solution. Okay. One more thing, I told you that this is explicit final difference method, and why this is explicit, why this is called as explicit, that is clear. But here one more word is the upwind scheme. So why it is called as upwind scheme? Because it goes here. Look at the figure here. The information, so it is actually according to the upwind, because it is according, the information is propagating according to the flow of your substance in the fluid. Okay, so this is here the direction of the flow. Okay, so it's like using the previous value, you are finding the next value for the space variable, right? So you are going in this direction, and flow is also in this direction. So that's why it is called as upwind scheme. It's slightly confusing, see, because it's like how we look at the equation. We are saying we are using the backward scheme, but still the name is the name of the scheme is upwind scheme. But upwind is corresponding to the flow of the fluid. Okay, it's not according to the method we are using. Okay. So now we know we discussed the transport equation, model problem, discretization scheme. Okay, we successfully approximated it using the forward and backward method, and then we have written the recursive relations, which we'll see in the next module, how to find exactly, write this in the coding format, and find the solution. So I'll pause here and I'll take questions if you have any. You can unmute yourself and ask. Are there any
Yes.
questions?
So
Yeah.
I have a doubt. Could you please repeat these conditions on ion N? I did not understand those.
Which condition?
I mean, why are we having these conditions on the subscripts I and N?
You mean these three different equations?
Yeah, second and third I did not get. First one is the initial boundary condition which was given, right?
Yeah, right. First is given, okay. And what is the data we have? We have the value at t equals to 0, and we also have the concentration we are injecting at the left hand point, right? So we also
Yes.
have that boundary data. So we also want to impose that boundary data. So where should we impose it? So for that, we have written the equation for I equals to 1, because for I equal to 1, it uses the data for I equals to 0, which is exactly our boundary data, right? So look at that ULTN point. So U0N is replaced by ULTN. So this third equation is to impose that boundary condition. And the first equation was to impose the initial condition. That's why we have three equations. Is it clear?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the CFL part? Like I didn't understand that.
Okay. So CFL condition, okay. There is a current number. Okay. Just let's talk about generally. There is a current number and there is upper bound to that number. Okay, it depends upon the scheme. So for this problem, this number is A is your velocity. Okay. Okay, I can open the different note. Okay. Okay. So this is current number and there is some condition on this. Okay. So here in our problem, this is A delta t by delta x, and we are saying that this should be less equal to 1. Why? Because this implies that A delta t is less equal to delta x. This is what? A is what? Your velocity, right? And delta t is your time step. So this term is actually your numerical displacement. And this is your discretization factor. So if this is on the x-axis, suppose this is here, we have the discretization factor. Okay. So what we are saying is this numerical displacement should be less equal to delta x. It should use only the one value previous to it. Okay. If A delta x, if that is greater than this time step delta x, okay, then that means we need the value which is next to next value. We need that value. So it will come up here. We don't want that. We can't find the solution like that. Okay, so that's why we need the previous values. Just make it a little bit bigger. Okay. So if this is a value. So we want to use just the previous value, just the one step value. That's why this condition is needed to impose. Is this fine?
Yes, thank you.
Rekha, maybe you can just rewrite that equation.
Which equation?
The scheme. It will give something like 1 minus delta t by delta x. You can numerically also so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good point. So why that number? I'll show you that how that number is coming up. Here. Yeah. Look at the equation here. This number here, general equation. Yeah. Here. So this is, you can write this as 1 minus A delta by H URN. So So this is A delta. Delta is your what time step, and H is your discretization, space discretization factor. So this is your Courant number, and we want that this should be less equal to 1, otherwise the solution will blow up. Okay.
With plus A delta.
What?
HUIN minus 1.
Sorry?
It's a plus A delta by HUIN minus 1.
Plus A delta. No, that should be minus, right? That's why the constant should be less equal to.
That's fine. We have one more term to that.
Acha. I just wanted to discuss about this. That's it. Yeah. So this is UIN minus 1. Huh?
Okay.
Okay. So this constant we want that should be less equal to 1. Next question.
So here one is asking that this is relevant to CFD, but I think the method FDM is applicable everywhere.
No.
Applicable.
No. That's a problem. The method FDM is applicable everywhere. You can write a FDM scheme for any equation, but there are two things. First, what is the geometry of the domain? If you ask me, imagine how do you compute the stress happens in the body of an aeroplane. Aeroplane has a very vivid structure, you know. It's not a rectangular geometry. So in such cases, you cannot apply FDM. FDM is a very robust method. It's a very simple method. It's based on our intuitive ideas of differentiation. So it works very well, provided you have theoretical assurances of stability, consistency, and convergence. If you blindly do a finite difference method, I dare you to warn you. I mean, FDM will not work. You will get some solution, but that will be wrong. There are two chances. Either your scheme will shoot up, you will get numbers like 10 power 50 and 10 power 20, and you will be surprising, oh, why is this happening? I did a very nice code, MATLAB is robust, and why this computer is giving me stupid values? At this point, we have to go back to the theory. What is happening? You know, when this scheme is converging, when this is consistent with the PD I'm doing, is the numbers I'm getting is close enough to the real solution I wanted. See, all these models we're doing is to approximate some kind of natural phenomenon. As Rekha cleverly said, the transport equation mathematically mimics the advection that happens inside a blood vessel. Okay, so what you are trying to do is that without conducting that experiment in reality, are we able to get the concentration at the end point of the blood vessel? So we have to make sure that whatever number that is given by the computer is doing justice to the exact solution. And how do we do that? Okay, we have to consider the geometry of the domain. It has to be simple enough to apply finite difference method, or if it is complex enough, it's kind of a weird geometry like an aeroplane, we have to always go to finite element method, which is a whole another business. Okay, I don't want to talk about that because it will take many days, even 4 years, okay, to talk about finite elements. So let's not do that. Finite difference you can apply to very simple geometries. In fact, Cartesian kind of geometries or Atmax circular geometry. I don't think we can go anything beyond that.
Yeah.
The close that comes to a finite difference method is finite volume method that will work on other kind of meshes, geometries. Okay. Now that's one thing about geometry. Secondly, you have to consider the analysis of the problem. That is whether the scheme is stable. Are your numbers the number that is constructed by the scheme? For example, UIN plus 1 here, which you are computing for each n. Are they bounded? Is there a chance they can shoot up? So what we do in the stability analysis is mathematically prove that, okay, your scheme will never shoot up. It will be always bounded. That's a stability thing. Second thing is called consistency. That your numbers, are they close to the PD you are having? Okay, whether your scheme and your PD are the same thing. The scheme is an approximation of the PD. It is called consistency. Third one is called convergence. You will construct some kind of discrete solution from these numbers, and you have to check whether that solution, the approximate solution you are getting, is close enough to the exact solution. These three things you have to check whenever you design a scheme. If you don't do that, you will get unnecessary problems, and always do not trust any scheme you are designing. Always try to do a little, even if you are not into core mathematics, try to do a very simple analysis, at least a stability analysis. Usually stability analysis will work as a rule of thumb. In that case, usually the scheme will be it will be convergent. I will not say consistent, but it will be convergent. So do not write schemes blatantly and try to implement on a computer. There is a 99.9% chance it will fail.
The other thing is that this content is useful in the research for all the departments, like someone is asking.
Yeah, all the departments. This is mainly we are discussing about, the modeling of differential equations. You can also have, the control problems and like that. So for that we can use the schemes, but you have to do the analysis. You have to check the analysis whether which scheme works and all. But yeah, I think it is mainly useful to solve the differential equations. If your model problem is governed by the differential equation, yeah, then you can do it. You just have to choose the method. It's not that only FDM will work, as Gopi said. So he has nicely explained. We can use FEM and the other methods. It's not just the FDM method. Okay. And actually, that's the whole point of starting the session with explaining all this analysis, because this is very much important. So sometimes what we do, there is some other softwares where you don't know which on the back end which method they are applying, and what is happening behind that you don't know. And sometimes you get the incorrect results and you can't do anything because you can't check the back end values, and how should you change it? You don't know what's happening there, right? So that's why we prefer to explain all these things in the MATLAB, so that you can discuss all the analyses, apply the method and see the result.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
How do we know that where we will apply either FTM or FEM?
I think the answer is exactly same as Gopi said.
So it's basically the geometry. So suppose you have a square geometry, like a Cartesian geometry. Suppose your problem is on a cube. Suppose we are taking a square lamina and we are heating. We will do this experiment afternoon. We are consider a two-dimensional plate. I can show you something like this. And you heat one side. Okay. You want to find the temperature. What's the temperature on this side? So this is kind of a Cartesian geometry. So you can make very nice grids like Rekha drew in the figure. So such problems where the geometry allows you to make orthogonal grids, you can always apply finite difference. I will not go for finite element in that case. But if the geometry is very complex, like you have having kind of internal experiments. When you do wind tunnel experiment, you have to place in the wind tunnel, you have to place an area of aerofoil, and you have to understand how the streamlines of the wind flowing across. This is basically happening how you have to understand how an aeroplane flies in the sky. Okay, and the structure of aeroplane is not at all Cartesian. It's all exactly opposite to Cartesian. No, it has curves. There we cannot make Cartesian grids. Okay, if you try to do a Cartesian grid, some part will go out of the domain. So what we do in that case, there we have to use triangles to approximate the domain. We will use a patch of triangles, a union of triangles to approximate the domain. Okay, can you draw a figure of something like that?
Yeah.
So Rekha will just do a finite element discretization. So in that case, we have to go to finite element method. Now, when you have some quantity conserved, for example, when you are solving a conservation problem, some amount of material has to be always conserved. In that case, you have to go for something called finite volume schemes. Okay, so there is a lot of heuristics, physical intuition, and mathematical analysis. Can you do a non-Cartesian one with triangulation, something like a circle?
Circle.
Yeah.
But then you have to approximate and then
some approximation. Yeah. So. For example, the second figure, what Rekha drawn here.
But then you have to approximate, it's fine.
Yeah.
Polygonal.
So we have to approximate the boundary on the second figure by some kind of polygons. And then we will triangulate inside. Okay.
Then, okay.
See, like that. Okay. So, and for each triangle, we will find the solution. So that's a whole another business, marketing business on finite element method. So you have to consider the geometry first. If the geometry is Cartesian, well, you can always consider finite difference method. Geometry is non-Cartesian, go for finite element method. If some quantity is conserved, then we will go for something like finite volume method, or there is something called discontinuous Galerkin method. So such method should work for this one. Discontinuous Galerkin is another finite element method. So you have to consider the physics of the problem and also the geometry of the problem.
Yes, so
Yes.
just a small question is also there from Ivanshu Garg. If we have PDE whose solution is an odd function and we have a Neumann condition on boundaries, then which difference scheme should I use, like forward, backward, or central?
What is the most? But you have the exact solution.
Yes, maybe.
The solution odd or even that does not matter.
That doesn't matter. It depends upon the model problem.
Depends upon the model problem. For example, look at your scheme. Whenever we design that scheme, we never talked about the parity of the function, whether it's an odd function or it's an even function.
Exactly.
Now, there are techniques to impose Neumann condition and Dirichlet boundary condition. For simplicity, we have considered only the Dirichlet condition. When you have a Neumann condition, you have to introduce something called a ghost node and impose the Neumann condition into the scheme. If we get time, I will explain how to do that at the end of the lecture.
Yeah, because on the boundary condition we have a derivative.
Yeah, we have a derivative.
And then we need one more point, one more previous point. So for that point is referring as ghost point, and you need to give the corresponding value there and like that.
It's a little bit more difficult, but doable. If you will get some time afternoon, most probably you will get. I will explain some of these things we have discussed in little bit more detail.
Continue.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Should we take a break?
No,
no, break is at
11:30.
11:30.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in the next
So maybe we can have a poll. So the guys, we will make a quick poll here. The pace is okay. So please vote. So have you received a question?
Yeah, Murad Singh, we are happy. Just continue.
continue.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next model problem is Poisson equation. Okay, so here we are considering this is time independent problem, and spaces we have 2D variable. Okay, so let's consider this model problem. Okay, so consider this, imagine a drum. Okay, which has a square shaped drum, and drum head is stretched over a long square frame. You can consider this as x equal to, so this is 0,1 cross 0,1 domain. Okay, and you can see that this is stretched, and at the endpoints on the boundary, on the boundary, actually this is clamped boundary. Clamped boundary means this is the boundary, it is fixed. Okay, this is fixed. You can imagine this like the boundary is glued. Okay, and this is stretched surface, and the stretched surface, so there will be like tension in the membrane. And now you are applying a normal force. Okay, and because of the tension and because of the force, okay, this membrane will displace downwards. Okay, so each point will go under a certain displacement. So we have to find, so suppose there is a point xy, okay, and we want to find the displacement at that point xy. Okay, this is what the problem is, and the PDE corresponding to this is find u in 0,1 cross 0,1. So x varies between 0,1, y varies between 0,1, such that it solves the second order PDE, which is del xx u. So this is second order derivative plus del y u is equals to minus f. Because force is in the downward direction, we have minus sign there. And as I said, the boundary is fixed. Right? Boundary is fixed, so there will not be any displacement at the boundary. So the value on the boundary will be 0. So what is the boundary? We have considered 0,1 to 0,1. So when x is 0, x is 1, or y is 0, y is 1. So this will be y is equals to 0. This will be x equals to 0, x equal to 1, y equal to 1, right? This. So on this boundary, so when one of them is either 0 or 1, the value will be 0. So this is the boundary condition we have to impose. Now again, the same rule of the finite difference, we have to discretize in this variable, both the various space variables. So for x, we will divide it into the, these are actually I plus 2 points, okay? These points are actually I plus 2. So x is divided into x naught, x1, xi plus 1, and y naught, y is also, y interval is also y naught, y1 to yj plus 1. Okay. Just for the sake of simplicity, we are choosing I equals to j. You can take the different values, okay? Different number of discrete points. It doesn't matter, okay? It will not change the scheme. And then the difference, the discretization factor, both xi plus 1 minus xi is h, and same for the y, yj plus 1 minus yj is h. So this h we call as spatial discretization factor. Now we have the second order derivative, and we want to approximate the second order derivative by discrete values. So this also you can get from the Taylor series expansion. Okay? You just have to truncate at the second derivative and find the value. Okay? This is the standard way. So del x6, since we are considering del x6, this will be I plus 1 minus 2 and I minus 1 j. Okay. And for del y, this will be I j plus 1 uij and I j minus 1. Okay. We are taking the difference quotient in y variable for del y, second variable, jth variable you can say, and for the x6 we are taking in ith node. So this is the approximation of del x6, del y. So just substitute these values in the differential equation in the model problem. Del x6 u plus del y u is equals to minus f. Okay. And I rearrange it, just multiply L square on the right hand side. This will give you the equation. Now see what are the points we have needed here. Uij, right? Then we need u I plus 1 j. So suppose here we have I, and this is your j. Then I plus 1, this is I, so this here we'll need I plus 1, here this will be I minus 1, this is j plus 1 for fixed I, and you need j minus 1. So this is like you need, I should draw it somewhere else. So this is like you need all these values, 5 values. Since 5 points are involved, this is actually called as 5 stencil. Okay. And now as we did in the upwind scheme, now somewhat it is difficult here. So we prefer to write in the matrix form and then find the solution u. Okay. For that, let me open the new PDF so I can write it properly. Okay. So consider this is our grid, okay? These are, so here we have 0, okay, I'll take the bigger one so that it's visible, u2 up to j plus 1, and here also this is 1, 2, and then j plus 1. So like that, here we can take j plus 1. Okay. So on the boundary, this is our grid. I think, okay. Just consider this like this, okay. Fine. Now we know the boundary condition. What do we know? We know the value at 0 and at the j plus 1. So we know all these values are 0. right? All these values are 0 because of the 0 boundary condition. And we want to find the values here. Okay? So these are our unknowns. So this is, so what is the number of unknowns? So we want to find j here, j on the x-axis and j on the y-axis, right? So we want to write this. Suppose this is your u. What is this? This is your u11. No? This is your u21. Okay, j is fixed. J is 1 here. u11, u21, up to you go to uj1. Yeah? Like that. And for the second, then again you will be u1, 2, and go on. Now what do we want to do? We have to give the ordering to all these values. So we want to approximate uij, okay, by single subscript m. Okay. So ij, we want to give some lexicographical ordering, okay, to m. So how can we define this? This m can be defined as I plus j minus 1 into capital J. So let's see, if I and j are 1, then what is the value? M is 1, right? So u11 goes to u1. For u21, when ij is 2, 1, this is u21 goes to u2, right? Similarly, uj1 goes to uj. Now in the next step, next j level, when j is equals to 2, this is for u12, what is this? 1 plus j, right? J minus 1 will be 1. 1 plus j will be u of j plus 1, right? So like that, the last value will be what? Now this will be, so here this is going to u1, this is u2, this is your uj, this value is your uj plus 1. So there are j points, so this should be what? u2j, right? Like that. So last level is what? This is your jth level, okay? So what will be the value of the previous level? Just look at the similarity. This is uj, u2j. So here it will be u of j minus 1 into j for the j minus 1th level. So on the jth level, this first value will be j minus 1 into j plus 1, right? Similarly, because here we had uj, the first value this is uj plus 1. So on j minus 1, last value is uj minus 1 into j. So the first value on jth level is j minus 1 into j plus 1. And the last one will be j square, right? So with this relation, we are transforming this into the vector, all the solutions, all the pairings uij, where I is varying from 1 to capital J and j is varying from 1 to j. This we are replacing to a single vector u, where your indexing m is from 1 to j square, um, okay? So now we want to write the matrix corresponding to it. So here unknown is your, so this is the Poisson equation, this is the, so this is the equation we have, and this is the lexicographical ordering we defined. And u11 is, and these all the mapping, this is we have defined. And how do we, in this new notation, how can we write the boundary points? u0j, so when one argument is 0, for all j's it will be 0. So 0 is the boundary point, capital J plus 1 is boundary point, this 0 and j plus 1. So all these values will be 0 for every I and j, okay? And how the solution vector, unknown vector will look like? That will be u12 uj square, okay? What is f? Right hand side. So we want to write this in this matrix form, AUF, okay? U is our unknown vector, f is right hand side, and f will be minus h square f calculated at each point xi yj. Okay? and there will be your matrix A, which is of J square cross J square. Why the size of matrix is J square cross J? What are the entries of A? Matrix A. Look at this equation. Okay, this equation. So on the left hand side, all these values, so each at each discrete level, so there are J square plus J square points. So at each point, we are writing an equation. So for each Ij, we are writing this equation, right? So it's like we have J square unknowns and we have J square equations, right? So the size of matrix A is J square cross J square. This is for so Ij equals to 1. We have just rewritten this equation for Ij equals to 1. Okay. So here U01 and U10, this is 0 because of the boundary condition, right? So that's why we get this. Yeah. And when we write this in the new notation, when we write this in the single subscript, this will U1, U2 and Uj plus 1. So what is this? So you have a matrix A. Okay. This is, so your M is here what? When Ij is equal to 1, 1. M is your I plus J minus 1 into capital J. So M will be 1 here. And so this, look at the coefficients. Okay. So when it is minus 4 is for U1. Okay. So in the A11 there will be, this will be minus 4. In A12 this is 1. And in A1 I plus 1 or J plus 1 both are same, there will be this 1. So this M number is actually, this correspond to the row of A. Okay. So mth equation, so all the values will go in the mth row. All the coefficients will go in the mth row. So this was for particular I equal to J, Ij equal to 1, 1 case. Let's write general algorithm. Okay. So we have to run a loop over J is equal small j equals to 1 to J. And for each fixed J, we have to run a loop over I from 1 to J. Okay. And as I said, for each Ij, which correspond to the linear pseudo indexing, yeah, with this we can call a pseudo indexing. The entries in mth row of A can be computed by writing the scheme for fixed Ij. Now, see, there are the boundary conditions, right? As I said, there are boundary points. So this is 0 and this is J plus 1. And similarly, this J plus 1 is column, right? So we have to divide J into 3 cases because this is 5 stencil. So at this point, suppose I am considering this first level, then it uses the value at the 0th level. Similarly here, this point will use the left hand side. So the jth level will use the value at J plus 1, and here on the right hand side, we have to use the right hand side value at the J plus 1. We need to impose all these conditions, right? So we have to divide it in the 3 cases when J is equal to 1, when it is equal to J, because for 1, it will use the values on the 0th level which we want to impose as given as the boundary conditions. Similarly for the J, we want to impose the boundary conditions on the J plus 1th level. And then the mean in the in between J2 to 2 to J, this should be J minus 1. Yeah. Then 2J to J minus 1. Okay. This is fine. We can write in the recursive relation. So first case, J equal to 1. We fix this J equal to 1, and then we want to find the value at each ith level. So in I also now there are 3 different cases. Similarly, I equal to 1 will use the boundary condition, I equal to J will use the boundary condition, and in between we can use the recursive relation. So for J equal to 1, we already have in the term UI 0, so that will make it 0. And now we can use 3 different subcases. I equal to 1. So for I equal to 1, this will become 0, right? So again you have to impose this as 0. So you will have 3 values. Then for 2 to J minus 1, the same equation. There will be no change. And for equal to j, this j plus 1 will become 0. So we have j minus 1, j and j2. For in between.
That's a question.
Yeah.
Why how? What is that?
Yes, why you are doing pseudo indexing? What is the exact use of it?
Pseudo indexing, I'm doing it to write it in the matrix form. I want to write the matrix form and then solve the solution. That's why I'm doing the pseudo indexing, so that I have the solution vector I can write in terms of u1 to j square, and then because of that we can write it in the matrix form. To convert it into the matrix form simply.
Someone is asking, can you give some insight for EM wave equations? Is it we are going to take that or not?
No, maybe we not get time. At the end of the day, I will give you some glimpse of it. So there are so many things to do the end.
Yeah, at the end
keep
we
track
can
of all these things, organizes. Yeah.
Okay. So for j equal to, so second case j varies from 2 to j minus 1. Again we have to consider 3 cases for I equal to 1, 2 to j minus 1, I equal to j. Okay. So here, we will have the 5 tensile point when it is between 2 to j minus 1, and when it is I equal to 1 or I equal to j, we will have just the 4 values, because one boundary condition because of the one boundary condition, coefficient will vanish. Okay. And similarly, you can do this for j equals to j. Okay. Again, 3 cases. Now, the MATLAB has inbuilt loop structure. So as I told you, we want to fix the j and then find the value for each I. So this is like a loop structure, and MATLAB has inbuilt loop structure. And I'll just explain the pseudo code here. Gopi will show you. We'll do this in MATLAB later. Okay, I'll just show you how. I'll just explain how this will look like. Okay, so the input is j number of points. We have j plus 2 number of points, j plus 2 minus 2. So we have j number of points. So we have to define x0, x1, xj plus 1, and y0, yj plus 1. And h equal to 1 by j plus 1 is discretization factor, right? Because there are j plus 1 intervals. So j plus 1 is the 1 by j plus 1 will give the spatial discretization factor. Then we have to initialize matrices. A, as I told you, is j square. It has j square rows and j square columns. U is U and B. B is right hand side. Both are column vectors of size j square. Now we have to construct these matrices. So this is for n loop structure in MATLAB. So what it does, so for j equals to 1 to j, so suppose it first takes the value j equal to 1. Then it executes all the commands given in this loop structure. Okay. Then again it goes to j equal to 2. Do all the calculation. It goes until it takes the value j equals to capital J. Okay. This is what is the job of for n loop. So for j equals to 1 to j, again we run the loop. For fixed j, again we run the loop over i's. Okay. So for each fixed j, we will find the values for all I. So m is again, this we know, this is the pseudo indexing, and this will give you the B vector, right hand side vector minus h square of xi yj. Okay. So for each j, first you will get B of 1 like that, and B of j. When again this is the for j equal to 1. Then when you take small j equals to 2, then again that will give the value from j plus 1 and like that. Okay. So this will create u square plus 1 column vector. This loop will create this right hand side. Now we have just defined the matrix so that we can have the reference to this. We can just have the single subscripts. Lij gives the m according to our notation we defined before. Now we have to give the values to we define the matrix B, column vector B. Now we have to define the matrix A. Again, we run the loop over j equals to 1 to j. Okay, and as we have seen before, there are for each j there are three cases. So switch j and switch. What does this is switch command? Okay, what does it do? So again, switch means it when switch is j equal to, suppose j is equals to 1, then there are cases. Then it will run only the case 1 for j equal to 1. So switch. So when we impose j equal to suppose capital J, then it will run only this case, and otherwise for all other values it will run this case. Gopal will explain all these things later. So suppose j equals to 1, then we are into this case. Okay. So for each, then again we have the cases I equals to 1. For that again we have to use if command, if and else if. Okay. So if I is equals to 1, then you have to give the values of n, and then you have to give these coefficients. Okay. So I equal to 1, we did the calculation, right? So we can just see these coefficients should be 1 4 minus 4 1 for m equals to 1. I had written it somewhere. Yeah, minus 4 1 1. In that, so it will give the value minus 4 1 and 1. This m is your row, and L2 plus 1 gives the column. And similarly for the other, else if gives the 2, I varies from 2 to j minus 1. Then again we also want to do I equals to j. Okay, and the end, and this is the end of if loop. Okay. Similarly for the case j, we define I equals to 1, I varies between 2 to j minus 1, and I equals to j.
Rekha, there is one question. Like as the function is fxy, which will give a force downwards, as you said, doesn't it's a 3D problem? Then how you can...
No, we are giving just the normal force. We are just using the normal force, so that is in the one direction. So force is in one direction. We are just using the normal force. We are using just one component, you can say.
Abhishek, I think you got the answer.
But sir, actually, ma'am said ki the force is actually that is acting downward, right? So that will be a three-dimensional view of this Poisson's equation. Like the force, all things are, the strain and stresses are acting in the 2 dimension, but the force is downward. So how you can say that the problem is reduced to a 2-dimensional thing when the force is downward? That's my...
Maybe I can answer Abhishek's question. So imagine the stretch string. Okay. Maybe I can do an illustration.
Yeah, you can use the paper.
Yeah. So this is a thin sheet. Okay, and we are applying. Somebody has to help me on this side.
Sandeep,
we are giving a normal force. Can you hold like this here? Like this. And we are applying a normal force. So it will get a displacement, down like this. So you see now it's curved. Now all the displacement are in the minus k direction. Okay. So what we are trying to find is what is u of, in fact, imagine if you apply a random force, like not downward or any direction, something like this. In that case, every point will be shifted to another vector position. Something like, u1 of xy I cap plus u2 of xy j cap plus u3 of xy k cap. But when you apply a normal force, the displacement will be only along the negative z axis direction, that is a minus k cap direction. Okay, so when we apply normal force, we are only interested in finding what is this normal displacement. What is that? That is u3 of xy k cap. So for every xy, you will get a vertical displacement. What is that? That's what I said, that the displacement in the k direction. Okay, and that displacement will depend upon 2 variables, x and y. Okay, so the energy stored in the stretched membrane by this displacement only depends upon 2 variables, x and y. You are right, we are solving a 3D problem. Exactly, we are solving a 3D problem, but it can be reduced to a 2-dimensional problem. How is that? Because of we are considering only in one direction. Had it been we have a tangential force, not a normal force. Then we have to solve for all the three components, U1, U2 and U3. In this case, it is not happen. When you give a drum force something like this, always it's it's a delta function. You are giving force only in the downward direction. So this will oscillate like this only, upward and downward. Okay, so we are actually calculating the vertical displacement, and the vertical component of the displacement depends only on x and y. That is u3 of xy. Now we don't specify k cap. Why? Because now we know already it's already specified. It's in the vertical direction. That's why. But it's a very good question. I appreciate that question.
Thank you, sir.
Is this okay now?
Yes, got it.
Yeah. So now we know how to calculate the values of matrix A. Okay. So this is our matrix equation corresponding to the model problem. If we want to find the U, so U is equal to inverse of A into B. That's how we will find the solution U. Okay. So yeah, with this, yeah, the explanation is over. We want to show you, we will just show you the code. Okay, we'll explain it in the next module. We will just run it and show you the final results. Okay, and how to write that code, that we will explain in the next module.
Okay. So let me check if my monitor is connected.
Should I stop session?
No, actually that has to be displayed.
Okay.
Share. You have to stop sharing. So hold with us for like a few seconds. Let Rekha stop sharing. Yeah. Can you share from there?
No, which one? But
maybe you have to call Rahul.
Should I?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Can you see the screen, online screen?
I think you need to zoom. Oh yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's
it's
visible.
okay. We can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we will do is that I will first show a movie we made yesterday. So what we have to expect from this course, towards the end. Parth gave this idea. So thanks, Parth. Just go to Dropbox and PGSC notes. Yes, so we have, and so this is transport. Yeah, so we'll first run the movie we will finally create for the transport equation. How does it look like? Yeah, so this is basically the concentration versus space. Yeah. So you can see that this is the concentration, the profile of the it's not exactly concentration, it's a pseudo simulation. We used a sine function. So you can see that at each point the value of the concentration is at time t it was 0, now it has a positive value, again it has some other value. The profile, the curve represents what is the concentration at each position at each time. Now I will show another movie
For fixed time.
yeah, for fixed time. Now I will show you the Poisson one. Yeah, its Poisson equation is a stable, it's a stationary problem. So there we won't get any animation, but we can show a displacement graph. See, so this is what we will draw from ParaView. The color represents the magnitude of the displacement. Okay, so at the center we are applying a delta force at the center. See, there the maximum displacement is at the center. That is the red color indicating. That is the value of 1. Okay, as the legend indicates, we are getting a unit displacement, and at the boundary the displacement is 0. Okay, imagine a drum and a stretched drum, and we are applying a central force. So where will we get the maximum displacement? Maximum displacement will be always at the center. So that's what we are seeing here. So I will show you how we can generate such plots and contour lines by using ParaView. So always we have to implement the code in MATLAB to get the solution. Okay. Now we will show another one. So this is the handsome one we created yesterday, which we were struggling because of the stability issue. So this is, I said, when we heat one end of a strip.
Okay. Huh.
Okay. So this is a rectangular strip. We heat the left side endpoint. Okay. So what do you expect? When you heat the left side endpoint, slowly the temperature will rise from left side and it will go towards the right side. Okay. Let's run the simulation. See, slowly the temperature is increasing on the left side. You can see the color is changing to white from blue. Now it's slowly becoming yellowish. Now it's becoming red. Oh my god, it's getting heated up. Oh my god, it's superheat. The left side is burning. Okay, so the right side is 7 and the left side is hell now. So this is what we are going to simulate towards the end of the course. So by 4:30, I believe I can enable all of you can make such plots. Okay. So this is a beginner level workshop. You know, we have to just familiarize with the Paravis software and how we can import data from MATLAB so that you can apply such tools to your own problem. Is that okay? We can.
Yeah. So now, dear friends, we have a break, a small break till 11:50. And we will come back in next 15 minutes. So 11:50 we'll start again with second session. Thank you.